Good day, everybody. My name is Crys'Dawna, so welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, I am the owner and artist here behind Belle Renovare by Crys'Dawna. If you're not new here, welcome back, friends and family. As you can see behind me, I have a cedar chest. So let me give you a little bit of a history about this cedar chest. When we lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming, years ago, we bought this cedar chest. It was painted white, someone else had done it. We wanted something for our blankets in our living room, okay? So it had different hardware on it, it had all the things on it. It was white. Yes, it was white. So we got here and I wanted to redo it, and instead of using it for blankets, we ended up using it for a toy box for our kids. Now, I am going to completely redo this piece. We're gonna do a new base. We're gonna do a new paint job. We may reuse this top because it's in pretty good condition, but we're gonna unscrew this from here and make sure we do all the things. But there is one thing, there's a couple things. One, you can't really smell the cedar anymore. This is a lane cedar chest. And you can't really smell the cedar anymore, so I'm gonna show you guys how to refresh the cedar smell in your cedar chest. You need to make sure that when you do it, you're wearing a mask, because when you sand cedar, it is a carcinogen, and so you wanna make sure you're protecting your lungs. Also, I'm gonna show you, this is gonna be kind of loud. Okay, so this top is super heavy, and from my kids opening it and closing it, the hinges were broken off of it, and that is not safe. So my kids could be smashing their hands, I could smash my hands. So we are going to put new hinges on here. I'm gonna show you that. We're going to refresh the cedar. We're gonna just give this a whole new look. It is gonna stay with me. I am just going to refresh it and give it a new life. So this will be its third life that it's on within our family. So if you guys want to see me make over this lane cedar chest, keep watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and remember, everything I use will be in the description below. So stay on here if you guys want to see a complete transformation. The first thing I did was unscrew that top pad off of the top of the cedar chest. I will end up putting that back on later because it's just comfortable and it's a place to sit. And it actually came with the cedar chest, so it's the perfect size. So we're going to take that off and set it aside so that way we can work on the rest of the cedar chest. I am also going to remove all of the hardware that's on the front, and we're going to plug all those holes because I want a completely different look for this. The bottom of this piece is kind of outdated and I just wasn't feeling it anymore, so we're going to make a whole new base for this, but we are going to unscrew the base, and then I'm going to use my mini pry bar and a claw hammer, and I'm going to use the leverage from the mini pry bar to remove the bottom of this piece. I didn't have a solid plan for this, so I just was removing pieces and stepping back and seeing how it would fit into a new design. And there are these little side trim pieces that have little leaves on them, and again, it just did not fit with what I wanted. I want a smooth front, so I removed those as well, and then I removed all of the trim pieces on the front. Now this piece, even though it's a lane cedar chest, it's just veneer, and underneath is a press particle board, and so I needed to sand smooth, and some of these areas, when I pulled the trim up because they glued and they nailed it, it pulled a little bit of the veneer off, and so I need to use a 2-part wood filler to fill all of the gouges from removing the trim, and so that's what I'm going to do after I sand it all smooth with a 120 grit with my 3x4 electric ray. I don't want any hardware on here, so we are going to fill the hardware holes, and we're going to fill the little gouges that you can see. So I take painter's tape and I go on the other side where I'm filling so that it stops the filler, and that way it doesn't continue to go in. I am going to be using a 2-part wood filler. You can see right here, that's press board underneath. That pulled the veneer off, and these are all press board kind of gouges, and so we're going to fill that with this 2-part wood filler. Also Bondo, I think Minwax has a 2-part filler. So I'm going to remove the top with a flathead screwdriver, and I always make sure I wear gloves because this stuff is kind of stinky, so make sure you're in a well ventilated area or you wear a mask. And I'm going to take just a tongue depressor and I'm going to scoop out as much as I need. There is a hardener that comes with it, and you only need a little bit of the hardener. So just a little dollop of the hardener, and yes, that is a measuring thing. I don't know what a dollop is really, but you don't need a lot. And then I'm going to fold them into each other, and this is going to harden within about 10 minutes. So you don't have a long time to use this. So as I always say, only mix as much as you need so you don't waste it. It's always easier and better to mix more than to overmix and waste it. Now I'm taking a plastic spatula and I'm going to just smooth it over those areas. Think about yourself icing a cake. I'm going to push it into the holes, the old hardware holes, and I'm going to smooth it over those holes. And then the areas where it pulled up the veneer, I'm going to smooth over that. And then once everything is hardened, I'm going to go over everything and I'm going to sand it with, I'm going to start with a 120 grit and then do a 220 grit. If I feel like it hasn't done a good enough job to smooth any of the imperfections, you can go over it again after you sand it and repeat this process. I am going to build a new base for this. I want a more modern feel, and I'm going to use some oak boards, and I really like the natural color of oak, and I think it's going to go really well with this design. So we're going to use 2x2s for the legs, and I'm going to measure this one at 5 inches. Now the front 2 legs, we're going to cut at an angle. The back 2 legs, they're just going to be regular squares. So we're going to measure this at 5 inches. I'm going to take my speed square and I'm going to make sure that that line is straight. And for safety, we want to make sure we cut it off of a longer board. Okay, so these are 5 inches. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1x3, and you see how it butts up right next to it? That's going to be our piece of board that goes across. And so we're going to butt that up against the 5-inch line. We're going to make a line. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I need to know where to start my angle. I want my angle to start from the bottom of that line. So I'm going to make a mark. Either you're going to go this direction with the angle or the other direction with the angle. It doesn't really matter because these should be mirror images, so you could flip them if you cut one side. So the reason why we're doing this is because if you see I butt the board up against there, if I cut that angle any higher, it's going to make a gap. So we want to make sure that the angle that we cut is going to be flush with that 1x3 board. I have decided that 22.5 degrees is the perfect angle for these legs. I don't cut them at any other angle. That's the angle I've cut every single leg at on all of these bases that I've done. And you can see I'm cutting it, I'm lining it up on the outside of that mark that I made, so that way I don't undercut. And I'm going to place it on the miter saw, and I'm going to just cut it. Now, I like to pulsate when I am using bigger boards just so that it doesn't get caught. So I'm just kind of going up and going down. But you can see how I am cutting that angle on the outside of that line, and I'm cutting the angle off of a longer board. This is for safety. So do you see how we butted up there? And now that angle is perfect. It's not too much up, so there's no gap. Now we're going to set it back at 0 degrees, and we're going to cut the leg at 5 inches. We're going to cut the actual leg off of the length of that board. And this just makes it a lot more safe when you are cutting these legs at an angle. And so now we have a leg. And I'm going to repeat the process for the other side. And then we're going to cut 2 more legs at 5 inches so we have our back legs. Because each piece that you make a base on is different, this is how I like to measure the crossboards. So I'm going to place the front leg where it needs to be, and then I'm going to butt it up, the 1x3 up against it, and then I'm going to put the other leg right in front of it while it's lined up against the edges and make a mark, and I'm going to cut the board, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to put it in place. We're going to dry fit it, make sure that it fits nicely, and that's how I'm going to measure what each board needs to be across, whether it's on the sides, the back, and the front. And we're going to dry fit everything before we do our pocket holes. I purchased a Kreg Jig 720 Pro, and it comes with a measurement. What this does is this measures the thickness of your wood so that you know where to set your drill bit. So if you put it up against the wood and you see right here that it hits on that 3/4 inch mark, I am going to set my Kreg Jig drill bit stopper. So there's a stopping mechanism on there so that so when you do your pocket hole, it only goes to that depth. So you're going to loosen that up, and you're going to see on this drill bit, it actually has the measurements. So there's a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1.5 inch. And there's a little window on that stopper. And so you're going to line it up with the 3/4 inch. You're going to tighten it with that little Allen wrench. And that is set up for your particular piece of wood. Now remember, if you are using different size wood or different thickness, make sure you reset that. But I'm going to put it in to this Kreg Jig and I'm going to clamp it down, and then it's super easy. You just go in and you make your holes, you line it up, make your holes, and there you go. After I'm done making pocket holes in all of my 1x3 boards, I'm going to take a 1¼ inch Kreg screw and I am going to assemble the entire base together before I affix it to the bottom of the cedar chest. Once I have the base assembled, I set it on the bottom of the cedar chest, and then I'm going to take my Kreg Jig drill bit and I'm going to create a countersunk hole, and then I'm going to take a Kreg screw and I am going to affix it to the base so that way it is nice and tight and secure. If you want to refresh your cedar, the only thing you need to do is sand it. So I'm going in with a 220 grit and I'm going to sand it, but you need to remember to wear a mask or a respirator, because when you start sanding cedar, it becomes a carcinogen, and so it's really bad for your lungs. So make sure you protect yourself, but this is all you need to do. You don't want to seal it in. You don't want to use anything crazy on it. You can see right here over to the center, that was sanded, and then over here to the other side, those are some scratches. So that is how you revive the cedar smell. Also, remember that a lot of times cedar chests are actually veneer over, so it's a cedar veneer. So don't over sand it or you will sand through the cedar veneer. But this is how you make it have more life. After you sand, you can take a paper towel, you can vacuum everything out, and then you can also take just a damp rag and wipe any of the residual out. But you don't want to use anything else on it. You don't want to use any cleaners or sealers. And then now what I'm doing is I'm taping the base off because we are going to start painting it. So I like to tape so that way it's less that I have to worry about when I am painting over my pieces of furniture. Before I paint my pieces, I always clean them. So I'm cleaning it with Dixie Belle's White Lightning Cleaner, which I have put in a spray bottle. So I'm going to clean it really well with that. And then I'm going to go over it with clean water and a clean rag to get any residue off. So that way I don't have any adhesion issues, but I'm going to clean the entire piece. And then I'm going to paint the entire body with Midnight Sky by Dixie Belle, which is a very dark gray. It's like a grayish black. Now I want you to see in the center of this, there's a bristle in the middle. I took that out, but make sure you are checking for that so that it doesn't dry in there. So when you're painting, no one is immune to getting shedding from your brush. So make sure you're always checking to take the bristles and things out because it does not look good when it dries in there. I will be using the Victorian Damask stencil on this piece. And my idea is to do a blended but distressed look with this. And I'm going to be using warm colors over the black. I wanted it to pop. So I am going to place it, line it up and place it. And I did use a spray on the back of this stencil, but it's really not that great. So I'm not even going to tell you what it is because I wasn't happy with it. And so what I'm doing is I'm using foam brushes and I'm taking Dixie Belle's Honky Tonk Red and I am starting first. So I am going to stipple that and dab it in there. The key to stenciling is to make sure you don't have too much paint, and you want to make sure you're going down at it instead of going at an angle, because then it has more of a chance of getting underneath. Now, if you're using a stencil tacked, you shouldn't have a problem, but again, the one that I used on this wasn't that great. So you can also tape it down. What I'm doing is I'm just double checking to make sure that I don't have any bleed through. And then I'm going to switch over to Dixie Belle's Florida Orange. And in order to create a blended look and transition between those two colors, I'm going to slightly overlap that Honky Tonk red, and that way it blends in a little bit and there isn't a harsh transition line. So I'm going to repeat the process after I go over and overlap the Honky Tonk red a little bit with the orange. I'm going to go over with the orange, and then I'm going to go over with Daisy. I have a separate foam brush for each color. They're super cheap. And so I'm going to do Daisy after I do Florida Orange. And again, I'm going to overlap with the Daisy a little bit. And that way that transition line it looks blended versus a hard transition line. Once I was done, I pulled it up directly. So when you take your stencil off, you want to make sure that you pull it directly up so that you don't smear it. And then I'm going over the side doing the same exact thing, except I'm going to tape it in place, and this is going to continue the pattern. So this pattern is on both sides and the front, and I continued doing the blending part, and I think I like the way it turned out. Once my paint was completely dry, I went through and I distressed it. So I took a 120 grit and I sanded vertically so that I could distress it. And I wiped away with a microfiber cloth just to see how much of the paint was distressed. So if you want some areas more distressed, then you can push down a little bit harder in those areas. What was cool about the side is that because the base color was like a red and orange and yellow, that kind of showed through on the sides as well. Not so much on the front because we did take a lot of that paint off, but I'm wiping it away with a microfiber cloth and I'm going to continue to distress around the entire thing. And then I'm going to seal it with the Easy Peasy spray wax. So the Easy Peasy spray wax, what you do is you spray it on the surface and then you rub it in with a microfiber cloth or a paper towel. And that is how I sealed the body. I decided to keep the base the natural wood. I really liked the way it blended with everything. So I am sealing the wood with the satin clear coat, and that way it has protection on it. And then this whole piece is done. I really hope you guys like it. All right, friends and family, this video is done. The sun is shining in my face, which I'm not gonna complain about because it's going into fall in Germany and we don't get a lot of sun. But here is the piece. I know you can't really see it. Let's move it over here. Oh, now it's just dark. But that's the piece right there. I will have some staged pictures coming up here in a second. If you are not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Remember, everything I use is always in the description below. Make sure that you guys, if you are subscribed, you hit that bell so that you get all the latest notifications. I will hopefully have another video this week. It depends. I'm going to try to sit down with Desiree and show her how to blend and hopefully you guys get like a first person view. She needs to get new brakes on her car, so if it's not this week, it will be next week. It will be coming, I promise. I thought maybe it would be really helpful for you guys to have me sitting next to someone teaching them how to blend. So, again, have an amazing week. I hope you enjoyed this piece. It was a lot of fun to create. It's totally different. All right, guys, I will see you later. Happy creating and have an amazing day and week.
Hey, darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey, darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get